This is a look at multigenerational family therapy presented by Shelby Joseph and Emily Morehouse. Murray Bowen created multigenerational family therapy. This approach is sometimes also referred to as a transgenerational or intergenerational family therapy. Furthermore, the foundation for Bowen's thinking was evolutionary biology, so it is also sometimes called natural systems theory. Bowen's approach uses the idea that a family can be best understood when it is analyzed from the perspective of three generations. This is because a predictable pattern of interpersonal relationships connects the functioning of family members across generations. Bowen believes that the cause of the problems a person faces can be understood only by viewing the role of the family as an emotional unit. A basic assumption of multigenerational family therapy is that unresolved emotional fusion to one's family has to be addressed if one hopes to reach a mature and unique personality. Betty Carter was a major contributor to multigenerational family therapy. Carter integrated gender issues as part of family therapy, and she created an appreciation for diversity of culture. With Monica McGoldrick and Nydia Garcia Preto, she developed the family life cycle perspective. There are 8 key concepts that are central to Bowen's theory. The first two are differentiation of the self and emotional cutoff. Differentiation of the self is when intellect and emotion are separated psychologically, and it is the independence of the self from others. People that are differentiated are able to be guided by their thoughts instead of their feelings. Undifferentiated people have a low degree of autonomy, are emotionally reactive, and are unable to take a clear position on issues. This is their pseudo-self. A healthy person has a sense of belonging to one's family and a sense of individuality. Emotional cutoff is a strong indication of an undifferentiated self. Leaving a family of origin does not mean one is differentiated. A person who is not emotionally reactive experiences him or herself as having a choice of possible responses. Their reactions involved a reasoned and balanced assessment of self and others and are not automatic. Emotional reactivity is evident in clients who present themselves as paranoid, severely anxious, or panic stricken. Clarity of response brings out the solid self, in which a person has a broad perspective, a focus on facts and knowledge, an appreciation of complexity, and a recognition of feelings rather than being dominated by them. The second two key concepts are triangulation and the nuclear family emotional system. Triangulation is when two people recruit a third person in the relationship to reduce anxiety and gain stability. Triangulation can decrease the emotional tension between the two people, but the underlying conflict is not addressed and worsens in the long run. This causes the conflict in the couple to evolve into a conflict within the nuclear family emotional system. Bowen believed that a triad was almost never functional. There are primary triangles and secondary triangles. A primary triangle is two parents with one child. Secondary triangles are when one or more positions in the triangle is occupied by someone outside of the primary triangle, such as a sibling, grandparent, or friend. A therapist will focus on the primary triangle in session, but it is necessary to deconstruct or detriangulate interlocking secondary triangles first. The main function of primary and interlocking triangles is to reduce anxiety and return the family unit to a stable emotional equilibrium. Next key concepts are the family projection process and multigenerational transmission. The most common form of triangulation is when parents with poor differentiation fuse. This results in conflict, anxiety, and ultimately the involvement of a child in an attempt to regain stability. When a parent lacks differentiation and confidence in their role with the child also becomes fused and emotionally reactive. The child now has a problem. This produces a pseudo-stability for a while. Emotional instability in the couple seems diminished, but it has only been projected onto the child. When a child leaves the family of origin with unresolved emotional attachments, they tend to couple and create a family in which these unresolved issues can be reenacted. The family projection process has now become the foundation for multigenerational transmission. Sibling position is the next key concept. Bowen adopted Tommen's conceptualization of family constellation and sibling position. Tommen believed that position determines power relationships, and gender experiences determines one's ability to get along with the other sex. There are 10 power gender positions, and they are oldest sister of sisters, youngest sister of sisters, oldest sister of brothers, youngest sister of brothers, female child only, and the same 5 configurations for males in relation to sisters and brothers. Tommen's hypothesized best marriage was the oldest brother of sisters marrying the youngest sister of brothers. Both parties would enter the marriage with similar expectations about power and gender relationships. His hypothesized worst marriage was the oldest brother of brothers and oldest sister of sisters. Both parties would seek and want power positions, and neither would have had enough childhood experience with the other sex to have adequate gender relationships. When critical traits in a happy marriage are considered for these hypotheses, though, Toman's predictions start to lose credibility. Using Toman's ordinal approach, Bowen believed he could predict the role that children would play in the emotional life of the family, and he thought it would greatly determine which family patterns would be projected onto the next generation. The sibling cohesion factor, discussed by Guia, are a factor of healthier families. It is the capacity of the children within the sibling subsystem to meet without their parents and discuss important family issues, including their evaluations of their parents. The last key concept is the societal projection process or societal regression. According to Bowen, under circumstances of chronic societal stress, public anxiety would increase, and government leadership would abandon rational considerations in favor of emotionally driven decisions designed to bring short-term relief. The most common process is two groups joining together to preserve their own positions at the expense of a third. These processes tend to result in laws that do little to affect the chronic problem, bring relief to very few, and generate helplessness in many. When working with conflictual dyads or couples, Bowen attempted to maintain neutrality as a therapist. He believed that if the therapist becomes emotionally involved with any one family member, the therapist loses effectiveness and becomes part of a triangulated relationship. To be effective, family therapists have to have a high level of differentiation.
Bowen therapists focus on changing individuals within the context of their family system. While it may sound as though the individual can bring about change himself or herself, Bowen would not believe this to be true. He would say that the change will not occur from an individual in session, but the change will occur within one's family of origin. Significant change will come with detriangulation and opening family ties that have previously been closed. Without taking these steps, the problems will be passed down from one generation to the next. The two main goals of therapy are defined as 1. Lessening of anxiety and symptom relief. 2. To increase each family member's level of differentiation of the self. As a reminder, this is one's ability to separate feelings and thought. That is, to not have behavior automatically driven by emotion. A Bowen therapist will establish the tone of therapy as a teacher, coach, and neutral observer. It is common for the counselor to ask a series of questions so the client can figure out their role in the family. But the steps necessary to bring about self-differentiation is the client's job. The importance of a counselor knowing their own family influences is highlighted by the implications for training. Implications for training were developed by Bowen in 1972. There are 4 steps which help the therapist understand how he or she is influenced by their own family of origin. This will aid in the avoidance of triangulated relationships. As stated in the book, in Step 1, trainees are encouraged to construct comprehensive family diagrams, called genograms, in order to identify key turning points in their family. It is essential that trainees learn information about their family relational system. 2. Trainees are given the task of making visits to their family of origin for the purpose of becoming a keen observer of their family's process. During this time, it is crucial that they learn how to identify and control their own emotional reactivity to members in their family. 3. Bowen also encouraged trainees to visit their family in times of high tension, such as serious illness or imminent death of a family member, for it is at these times when change is most likely. Their task is to keep free from entering into old triangular patterns. In essence, they are to detriangulate themselves from emotionally reactive situations. 4. Instead of getting trapped into old patterns of emotional reactivity, they are expected to develop person-to-person relationships with as many family members as possible. The members should strive to relate to one another, rather than to talk about others. In many Bowen-oriented institutes, trainees must join a therapist's own family group to work on family of origin issues and reactions. This method of training brings about a level of self-awareness all practitioners need to remain objective and open to understanding clients. a focus on past relationships to design interventions like process questions, tracking sequences, teaching, coaching, and directives with family are viewed as more valuable to a Bowen therapist than the use of a particular technique. However, techniques including homework for clients and a way of questioning to expose one's role in relating with family members are used. Now, we will discuss some of the technique options. A genogram, which I am sure we can all picture, is defined as a map that outlines both the structure and the emotional processes of a family. It is used as a tool for therapists and clients to understand critical turning points in a family's emotional process. As previously mentioned, Bowen would include data over at least 3 generations in these illustrations. This is an example of a genogram that I pulled from the World Wide Web. It's from a program called GenoPro, which was previously mentioned in class. You can see how complicated the relationships can get, as well as the visualization of the triangular relationships. I have included a few examples of legends that may be used when working with clients to help create and then interpret the family diagrams. In the top left, you can see the illustration of a married couple. Directly below it in the family relations legend is an example of a separated couple who have not gone through the legal processes yet. Now moving down to the emotional relationships legend, you can see there are symbols for hostile, violent, abusive, harmonious, fused, best friend relationships, and more. The options to define relationships in programs such as GenoPro are seemingly unlimited. While genograms may be extremely useful for the client to consider their relations within the family, and for the therapist to better understand how relationships have been formed or broken, they can also be time-consuming, so assigning this as a homework project may be useful. Process questions are the most commonly used Bowen technique. When the therapist is engaging in this technique, they will remain controlled, somewhat detached, and cerebral. Process questions are a type of circular questioning that are asked of the person as part of a relational unit. Questions that emphasize personal choice need to be asked, such as, how do you want to react when? Name the situation. Remaining neutral is key. In session, the therapist will expect the family members to speak directly to him or her instead of to one another. According to Gia, who I will quote, relationship experiments are behavioral tasks assigned to family members by the therapist to first expose and then alter the dysfunctional relationship process in the family system. Gia's 5-step process should be present. Step 1 is to identify the triangle. 2, delineate the triangle's structure and movement. 3, reverse the direction of the movement, meaning the usual pursuer-distancer relationship should be flipped. 4, expose the emotional processes present. And finally, address the emotional processes to improve family functionality. Coaching is seen to be effective with well-motivated family members who have achieved the ability to separate their emotions from their actions most of the time. This technique helps build individual independence and confidence in the family member while the therapist remains supportive. By identifying triggers and exposing preferred responses, the individual continues to increase their level of self-differentiation. An I position is meant to help a client communicate from a rational place rather than an emotional one. These are clear, concise statements of personal opinion or belief offered without the emotional reactivity usually present in the room. These statements can allow couples and families to express opinions without assigning blame and placing further strain on the relationship. For example, one may say, when you do not listen to what I am saying, I feel ignored and unloved. Oftentimes, I positions are modeled by counselors in session, so family members can use the I statements after reeling in their emotion. The final technique I will be discussing, used by Bowen therapists, is the use of displacement stories. An external stimulus, whether a book, video, story, etc., is used to show a family a similar case of triangulation or emotional processes. Why is this effective? A client tends to be less defensive, yet this technique allows them to relate and see the issues present. The goal of the displacement story is to highlight family interactions and consequences and to suggest more functional solutions to that family. An example of a film commonly used, as mentioned by the textbook, is Ordinary People. The film is about the loss each family member feels after the sudden death of a son. The importance of good communication is highlighted as issues prevalent between family members prior to death begin to surface. Why is this helpful to the client? It provides an interesting story for the family to watch and learn that resistance from one family member can interfere with the therapeutic success of the whole family. Again, the main goal is to minimize defensiveness.
In December of 2016, the Sessom family was torn apart when the mother, Darcy, and father, George, decided to get a divorce. Samaya and Shelby are the daughters who were each impacted by this decision. This is their second session with Emily. Hello, ladies. It's good to see you again today. Do you have your homework from last week?
Yes, we brought it, but there were a few things that we disagreed on.
If you get your genograms out, we can discuss these differences. Shelby, what are some differences between yours and Samaya's genograms that you find to be important?
Well, I'm still close to my dad, even though he left. I know that he was leaving my mom and not us. And I drew my sister pretty far away on the genogram because we've kind of broken apart.
Samaya, how do you react whenever you hear Shelby say this?
Well, we were never really extremely close, but after the divorce, we've become even more polarized, accepting the idea that our dad was wrong.
I hear that you feel like this divorce has torn you both apart. However, I do see you both here in front of me trying to work on your relationship. You use the term polarized. What does this mean to you?
Like we've been split.
Shelby, what do you do to resolve this issue when you or your sister disagree or are split?
I can't seem to explain my point of view to her. I end up getting really frustrated and then I just walk away.
Just like dad.
And then she makes a comment and we end up getting in a screaming match and it just is really bad.
Shelby, how would you like to react when you both disagree?
I don't know. I guess I just wish that I was able to have like a calm response. Like I hear what you're saying, but I just don't agree.
That would be an excellent response. May I see both of your diagrams? Tell me if I'm wrong, but Samaya, your diagram indicates that you're the oldest sibling. It also seems as though you're not as close to your father as your sister is after the divorce. Is this correct?
Yes, I cannot seem to forgive him for cheating on both my mother and us, and that the fact that he chose another family over us.
If you were to speak to him directly, what would you want to ask?
Well, I've refused to see him ever since he left, unlike her. But I want to know what was so horrible here and like why he had to leave and why has he not reached out to me? I mean, obviously I'm not the favorite daughter. I just want to know like why he decided to leave and why now.
It sounds as though you feel ignored, unloved, or abandoned by him. Is this correct?
I guess so.
Would you be willing to talk to him if you could get answers?
Well, yeah.
Samaya, I want you to sit down individually with your father this next week and talk to him about some of the questions we came up with during the session. Opening up the line of communication would be beneficial. I want you to put effort into this activity and into the relationship. Think about how you feel during the conversation and reflect on it afterwards. This is what I want to talk about next session. Ladies, thank you for coming this week and talking about some tough things. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Nope.